This is the 2009 Audi R8 Type 42, and it is probably the coolest mid-engine car that you can buy today.
Before we start talking about the Audi R8, I want to say thank you to the owner, Umar, who was kind enough to let me drive this for the first time, because these things are pretty rare, or either they're tuned or modified or probably crashed. This one is probably one of the cleanest you'll see. Now, the problem is that this doesn't have everything in stock, meaning that the wheels are not stock and it does have some extra changes, which we're going to talk about in detail. First thing we talk about is the fact that when this thing came out back in 2006, 2007, it received, well, glamorous reviews. It was considered like the instant classic even back then. It won so many awards from journalists around the world, to even Playboy named this car of the year. It was featured in Top Gear many times, and it was also compared to the Nissan GT-R R35, which came out exactly during the same time as this. This was Audi's first time trying to conceive and make a proper supercar that could compete against the Porsche 911. So this thing was sort of like the punch that Audi was throwing at Porsche, even though both companies at this point are owned by the same company, which is Volkswagen Group. And we're going to talk about some of the things that this shares with other supercars that are part of the VW Automotive Group.
Some journalists call this car the poor man's Lamborghini, which is silly because the cars share a lot. The Type 42 is based on the Lamborghini Gallardo. It shares the chassis and the engine, of course, because both companies are owned by Volkswagen.
The whole point behind that was that Volkswagen could save cost by making two cars with almost the same chassis and the same engine, so that way they could sell one for less money than the Lamborghini, which of course cost them more than the Audi R8. The R8 was equipped with a 4.2-liter V8, 32 valves, meaning 4 valves per cylinder. It made 420 brake horsepower. This is technically the same engine that was used in the Audi RS4 back then. The difference is that this has a different lubrication system. And it came with an automatic transmission and a 6-speed manual. The 4-wheel drive system is based towards the rear. It can send 70% of its power to the rear wheels and 30% to the front, but it can also send 85% of the power to the rear wheels. The 4.2-liter V8 R8 did 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, and that's of course for the 6-speed manual. Meanwhile, the automatic did it in 4.3 seconds. The transmission in this car was built by Graziano Tranis, which is a company that builds transmissions for many supercars, like the McLarens, I believe, is one, and of course the Lamborghini Gallardo, which used technically the same transmission as this one. The difference is that this was, of course, a lot less than the Gallardo, and in some ways it still is. Which of course brings us to this, the 6-speed gated manual transmission. The thing is that today you don't find many supercars that have a 6-speed manual transmission. In fact, the last one that was made was a Lamborghini back in 2013. The latest one is a Koenigsegg, which is technically not a traditional 6-speed manual transmission, but it behaves like one. The good news is that if you are looking for one, the best way or the most fun way would be a 6-speed manual transmission. And most importantly, this thing will hold its value. In fact, I was looking up online for a 6-speed manual transmission R8, the Type 42, which is the first generation. Well, let me say this, it was pretty hard finding something was as clean as this model. Like the interior for this, the owner, of course, has kept it in a very good condition. It's the second owner, I believe. It has over 75,000 kilometers. The interior is still, in my opinion, very much up to date. Like we got a screen in the middle. He has installed the Android Auto so that way you can connect to the phone. It is of course touchscreen, and everything else in this car seemed like very much up to date in many ways. I know it's been almost 15 years since this thing came out, but things are not totally outdated. And if you can find one that is as clean as this one specifically, well, you got yourself an amazing bargain. The seats, for example, in this one, although it does have the suede portion in the center, and we got the leather, of course, it's still very, very good. They don't look as, well, let's just say outdated, and most importantly, they're still in a very good condition. Even the dashboard is quite clean, I have to say, and not too many scratches. It seems like the previous owner and of course the current owner has taken care of this. The owner decided that well, the stock exhaust didn't sound as good, so what he did, he upgraded to the Akrapovic exhaust system with these carbon fiber tips, which again look perfect. They're just a bit extended out, but they fit the car perfectly in my opinion. And if you look carefully, this beautiful design at the rear end, like the way they have carved this part here for the airflow, everything about this car was designed in a way for better aerodynamics. And another thing that I love about this, the fact that we got the R8 badge on the left side. You see, in most supercars, you rarely see badges at the back, so you'll never know, or you probably should know what car it is, but without that badge, most people won't be able to tell. This, on the other hand, has the R8 badge on the left side, and if you notice, the license plate says gated, because, of course, it's a gated 6-speed manual transmission. It's not that hard, right? Well, the aerodynamics don't stop there, not just the rear end. You got the front end, of course, as well, the massive grille in the front, and we got more around this area than we have under the headlight. But what's important is that the Audi R8 was technically the first mass-produced vehicle that had full LED headlight. Yes, in most cars today you find it, even in regular cars, but back then was a big deal. After that, of course, it got spread everywhere, and even standard consumer cars, and of course most supercars as well. The R8, in this matter, was the first one to have full LED headlights. Pretty ahead of its time. Now let's get to the next part, common issues. How did I find out about the problems with this car? Well, first of all, you can go online and look up the most common problems with these models. And the good thing is that, of course, someone owns this, so he actually knows a lot about this car himself because he's worked on it. And being a mid-engine, some ways this is pretty easy to work on, especially on the engine. You might not need to drop the engine completely if you want to work on it. You can still work from the top side. He himself said that he changed the spark plugs himself in his garage. Now, let's talk about the first problem. Go back to the fact that I mentioned that this has coilovers. Why? Well, the mag ride was prone to failure. So what most people did is that they replaced them because they were very costly and put coilovers. So if you're looking to buy one and it comes with a mag ride, well, be aware because it might fail. So that means you're going to be stuck in the middle of a highway, in the middle of somewhere where you're going for a nice trip, and the suspension system will just stop working. That means you can't even drive the vehicle. So that's something to keep in mind. So the best way is that if you get one with mag ride, replace them, keep them on the side, and then install coilovers, because that way you can also adjust the height of the vehicle, and most importantly, it does give a bit of a nicer ride. The next thing, it has to do with the engine. Another known problem with these models is the built-up carbon in the engine. So this car will require you to get a nice carbon cleaning every 50,000 kilometers. This is what I was told from the owner, and I've read online that most owners have done that. So you need to figure out a way to get this done if the previous owner hasn't done it, because it can cause definitely major problems, and of course the engine is not going to run as it should if it has a carbon buildup. The next problem is again with the engine, but a bit different. It has to do with the AC. The AC compressor in this vehicle is belt driven versus the standard ones, which is usually clutch driven. So in case if you come with issues in terms of the AC not working, you know where the problem is. Now, in terms of the engine itself, this is pretty much bulletproof. So it will run as long as you maintain it, keep it an oil change, do everything necessary to keep this up to date with maintenance, and this thing will run like bulletproof. Like this model that you see here has over 75,000 kilometers and it still does very, very well. It runs really smooth, and of course the owner has taken care, so did the previous owner. 8,000 RPM, I love this thing. Scream, baby, scream! Oh! Oh! I love this. Absolutely love this. First time jumping in, I'm already obsessed. Into third gear, that's the sweet spot in this thing. You know, every time I drive sort of like a modern classic car, I'm always thinking, oh my God, this thing, it's gonna have a horrible clutch. It's not gonna be comfortable. It's gonna be very noisy. It's probably gonna break down. Not this. I jumped in, didn't stall it, did very well. And that to me is a success for the first time. Why? Because I've never driven one. So I didn't know how the clutch behaved on this thing. It's smooth. I love this gated because it kind of like guides you in. It guides you in where you need to shift. Second. Scream, baby, scream, scream. 7,000, 8,000 RPM. Oh. It's so planted for a car that came out in 2009. Feels so glued to the ground, and I'm not scared that I'm gonna slide off and hit the ditch. This thing is gonna keep me safe. That's just the way I feel with this car. Scream, baby, scream! And that exhaust sounds really good. Brakes are fantastic, touchy. You press them a little, the car will slow down. I love this thing. You see, the thing is that the V8 made it to a 6-speed manual transmission and an all-wheel drive rear bias. It's heaven. It's absolutely heaven. When this thing came out, the GTR was around the corner too. It was somehow conceived because of the 24-hour Le Mans, so they were planning to release this thing. They just were waiting to get the design perfect, and it just made sense to have an R8. It totally made sense because this thing at the beginning wasn't as successful as many other cars, but with time, it became one. Oh. And here's the thing though, it's always in sport mode because that button in the center for the suspension, it's useless because the mag ride is gone. So you technically only have sport mode the entire time, which again, it's not a bad thing. I'm obsessed with this thing. I'm obsessed how it drives. It drives like a modern supercar in some ways, the 6-speed. This could be one of those cars where you are pissed off at your partner kind of thing, or you're just having a bad day and, oh, there's a railroad here, I gotta be careful, and you want to go for a drive. This is that kind of car. Oh, sing, baby! I love this. Genuinely love this. It's so much fun, and I feel so comfortable driving. I can just chill. You don't have to drive this all the time. You don't need more horsepower. It's just perfect. And you can find one that is super clean, like this one that the owner has taken care of. This thing will be a joy. And I'm very happy for one reason, that I getting to drive one, because it's very rare to see these things on the road. They're very, very rare. I'm obsessed. I am genuinely obsessed, and I feel like I'm gonna end up with no gas soon, because it sings. It sings like a supercar in some ways. And everywhere we park this thing, people stare at it. Come on, baby, get me there, get me there, get me there. Oh! Go on! By the way, I got the approval from the owner to do this, so he was okay with it. He saw me driving in and he's like, you're okay. So he's actually behind me. I love this. I don't want to give it back. There's just something about a manual transmission, especially when it has a very good engine. A bit bumpy, and the ride with the coilovers, it's perfect. It's literally perfect. I love this thing. I enjoy how it drives. And here's the thing, you don't have to drive like a maniac all the time like myself. All you need to make sure is that you're getting a car that was taken care of. Like, this thing screams beyond 8,250 RPM out of a V8, naturally aspirated. I'm so glad that Audi made these, because they're so much fun, and I have never driven the manual. I've driven an R8, the new gen, the second gen, I believe, but I've never driven this one, and I must say, I judged them at the beginning. I judged them quite a lot. Why? Because, well, I just thought at the beginning they didn't look great, and I thought it was a bit girly. That blade on the side was not quite appealing, because I had never driven one. Come to Papa! Ah, woo! I love this. Ooh. It sounds so good. It sounds so freaking good. Like, that exhaust, the engine, everything. Ah. I feel like the tranny is working with me the entire time. It's not just letting me go nuts. It's like, okay, on your own. No, it says, I'm gonna let you enjoy while I keep an eye on you. That's how this thing works. I love it. I love it. Oh, it's amazing. It's really amazing.